paranoid, schizophrenia spectrum, and other psychotic disorders. Back when I first learned about it in the DSM-4 TR, it was in the category just known simply as psychotic disorders, and something like schizophrenia was in a discrete category, and there were types of schizophrenia like paranoid, catatonic, disorganized. They've changed it to a spectrum, acknowledging the varying degrees with which somebody might be experiencing the symptoms. But what you need to know is that if something is a psychotic disorder, if somebody is psychotic or there's psychosis, it means that they've lost touch with reality, that what they are interpreting in their internal world and the information that they're getting from their external world, there's a mismatch there. So here's the list of disorders in this category: schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. I will briefly go over some of this, but I'm going to put most of the focus here on schizophrenia. First thing I want to point out, though, is right at the beginning of this list, the schizotypal personality disorder. I'm going to talk about that one specifically when we look at personality disorders. Okay, so schizophrenia, you need 2 of 5 of these symptoms for a diagnosis. But one of the first things I want to clear up is that there's often this misconception that a multiple personality disorder is the same thing as schizophrenia. And I want to just put that out there that that is not the case. They're completely different disorders. Schizophrenia literally translates into split mind, not split personality. So it's a fragmenting of thought processes. Split personality, or used to be called multiple personality disorder and is now called dissociative identity disorder. Completely different and even more rare condition. Schizophrenia would affect about 1% of the population, although to varying degrees. So the first symptom here, delusions. Delusions would affect actually the majority of people with schizophrenia, I'd say at least 80%. And delusion is a breakdown of thought. So somebody could have a delusion of persecution where they feel like people are after them, or this delusion of grandeur where they're going to save the world of some type of problem, or they're here to deliver people to some better way of life or something. Delusions of reference. I don't know if you guys saw the movie A Beautiful Mind. I know some of you have. But John Nash had delusions of reference here, where he was taking various unrelated things and putting them together as though he were breaking code. So somebody experiencing delusion of reference will often put personal meaning on it. Oh, that was about me. This is about me. That thing over here, that's a sign. That's meant for me. And I'm supposed to put this together over there. Somebody said that word and it's a total stranger out nowhere near me. But obviously that related to me in some way. So some of these delusions, maybe would cause little harm to the outside world, but be very uncomfortable for the person. So if I think that, there's information there out about me and people are spreading lies about me, I'm delusional about that, and I can tell that they're passing these lies when they pull out a phone to take a selfie. So you see someone taking a selfie and obviously they're spreading information about me. The selfie angle is just a cover for that. And you think okay, that would be very uncomfortable for me if that's what I believed. Now, obviously a delusion like that gets more troublesome if then I decide that it's my job to protect people or to protect myself, I should say, against people who are spreading these lies and these rumors, and I have to take you out to make sure that it doesn't happen again. You see where that escalated really quickly. At one hand, it was just, people taking selfies and I was misreading it. On the other hand, I'm actually doing something about it. So there's an entire range of how bad these delusions will go. There's a case I read about in a book where this guy thought that he was here to save the world, or I should say save all the children of the world. He was going to save them from starvation. And so he was, that sounds lovely, right? Okay, he wants to save everybody from starving, all the children. And he would keep all of these detailed notebooks, thing after thing about how he was going to do it. And it turns out that he was looking to put them on another planet. I'm not really sure how he thought that was going to come together, but it was a good thing that he was stopped before he actually tried to implement his plan. That would be a lot more dangerous. But I don't want you to think that if somebody's delusional, that means that they're dangerous. It's just, again, that's why it's on a spectrum. Not everybody will be dangerous, but some delusions are more dangerous than others. The next symptom there would be hallucinations. And hallucination is a breakdown of your senses. So if somebody's hallucinating, they are getting sensory information. Their brain is responding, their thalamus is responding as though it has received sensory information, and yet there's been no external stimulus. Auditory hallucinations would be the most common in schizophrenia. If somebody is experiencing hallucinations, where they hear voices or they hear things that aren't there. The next most common would be visual, and other types of sensory hallucinations would be more rare. Like, you're not going to typically get tactile hallucinations unless somebody is using certain types of substances. If you guys are interested in learning more about this disorder, there is a book that was written, The Quiet Room by Laurie Schiller. It's a first-hand account, and actually it says multiple perspectives in this book, about a girl from Scarsdale, actually, who had, had an onset of schizophrenia, and I guess she was at 17 when she noticed the symptoms coming on. Yeah, 17 and away at camp. And the first thing that she became aware of were these auditory hallucinations. They're kind of vulgar in language, but they kept saying horrible things. And to make them stop, she would be out on the trampoline or something at her camp and just jump all night to try to make it stop. She developed these symptoms before they had the current medications that they have to treat the positive symptoms of schizophrenia. I'll talk about that in a second. So left unchecked, her hallucinations were auditory. They got worse. She was in and out of treatment. And eventually she started getting visual hallucinations as well. I will tell you that the book is like a really quick read if you decide to read it. But I will also tell you that when I read it, 20 some odd years ago, it scared me. It was really hard to think that, like, this is somebody's life, that the thing that they can't trust is their own brain in that way. So I thought it was scary. It was terrifying, actually. And you might note with a lot of these psychological disorders, you might relate to some symptoms of like an anxiety disorder or mood disorder, although you'd probably be off the mark in terms of what it actually looks like, because you're new to this stuff. You're just learning about this stuff. But I don't think you're likely to relate to these types of things unless you've experienced them. So those would be examples of positive symptoms in schizophrenia. And so just kind of stop there for a second. A positive symptom, it doesn't mean a good thing. It just tells you the direction. It's something that's added, where a negative is something that's taken away. And a mixed would be that it has aspects of both. So a positive symptom would be like a delusion would be positive. It's added to your environment. The hallucinations are added. If you were catatonic or that sort of thing, that would be a negative symptom. So next we have disorganized speech, for example, frequent derailment or incoherence. When we're talking about disorganized speech, we're really referring to a communication problem. So somebody who frustrates in their attempt to try to communicate something, to try to explain why they are upset, or to stay on a single point and move with it. Sometimes you can hear the disorganized speech like, okay, so if I were to ask, why are you here in the hospital? You might hear them say something like, I really don't want to be here. I've got other things to do. The time's right. And, when opportunity knocks, where we're just sort of moving all over the place and not really getting our point across. In another case, it could be something like, I'm sorry that you lost your uncle. And, the response would be something like, yeah, thanks. My uncle used to like to go fishing. I like to go fishing. I'm good at fishing. My uncle, he could kill a fish with a knife. I could kill a fish with a knife. I could kill you. I don't even need a knife. I could kill you with my bare hands. And it's like, what just happened there? That sort of thing would happen. I saw somebody that I know received an email from somebody accusing them of something. It wasn't even clear what. It was this long email, and it just kind of goes from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. I have no idea what the overall point was. So when somebody's having these disorganized speech symptom, you often don't know specifically what they're talking about. They're not spending time focused. You're not sometimes even sure if they've understood the question. Again, it's a communication problem more than anything. Next, we have the grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior. Some of the things you might see here would be, say, an inappropriate affect, like laughing or crying at improper times. They may also hoard objects or act in really unusual ways in public. For example, they might have extreme motor dysfunctions that range anywhere from like wild agitation to complete immobility. So they might have something like waxy flexibility, where they leave like an arm or leg or just something in like a weird position and then never seem to get the message to move it. They kind of leave it where it is. They could hold unusual postures, as if they were fearful of something terrible happening if they were to move. So lastly here we have the negative symptoms, and I'll go through some of what that is. So looking at affective flattening, so somebody with schizophrenia, they appear to not be aware of what's happening sometimes. So there could be a very like stressful, upsetting thing happening or very exciting in some way, and you look at them and there's no emotional readout on their face. It's almost as though they're wearing a theater mask and you can't see it. You just can't see what's happening. The same thing would happen with what they're saying as well. It's the tones are flat. There's no indication that there's any sort of internal emotional reaction. And that's the thing, is that there may well be a very strong internal emotional reaction, but they won't project that on the outside. So again, it's a communication issue. They can also be anhedonic. So if you remember that from when we talked about mood disorders, major depression, that inability to find pleasure in things that people would normally typically consider pleasurable, like eating, social interactions, sexual relations, that sort of thing. Alogia is another symptom, and what this is dealing with, it's basically saying without words is what that means. And somebody with this symptom, they give you, when they answer your questions on stuff, they give you very short, clipped replies. The replies tend to be very brief with very little content in them. So for example, if someone were to ask me like, oh, do you have any kids? I might be like, well, yes, I have 3 kids, a boy and a girl who will be 8 in October, and I have a 4-year-old. Actually, she just turned 4 a week ago. Like, whatever, just some details like that, right? Now, you ask the same question to somebody who has alogia, and it goes more like this. Do you have any children? Yes. How many children do you have? 3. How old are they? 8 and 4 and 8. So this is thought to be a negative thought problem rather than inadequate communication skills. And lastly here, we really have avolition. So that is that, you're without volition, essentially. So it's this inability to initiate and persist in activities. People with this symptom look apathetic. They show little interest in performing, even the most basic day-to-day functions, even including those associated with personal hygiene. So looking down this list, and what we didn't talk about, I told you I will talk about this. So for delusional disorder, it used to be called paranoid disorder. In this disorder, somebody has these non-bizarre types of delusions for at least a month in duration. They don't typically have auditory or visual hallucinations. If they do, they're not prominent. They don't have odd or bizarre behavior. Their functioning is not impaired, really. If they've had mood episodes, mood disorders, it's usually brief in duration compared to what they're going through with the delusional periods. And obviously it can't be related to other issues like drugs and that sort of thing. But it is a serious mental illness, often referred to as psychosis, in which the person can't tell what's real from what's imagined. And the main feature of this disorder is the presence of delusions. And as you know, delusions are those unshakable beliefs in something that is not true. A brief psychotic disorder would be like a sudden and short-term display of psychotic behavior, such as like hallucinations or delusions, but it occurs in association with a stressful event. Okay, so here you have schizophreniform disorder, which is another psychotic disorder. It's extremely similar to schizophrenia. A person can't tell the difference between what's real and what's not. The big difference between schizophreniform disorder and schizophrenia is the duration. So in schizophreniform disorder, you have symptoms lasting from about a minimum of 1 month to a maximum of 6 months. And schizophrenia, you would have symptoms for 6 months or longer. And in schizoaffective disorder, you have a combination of the symptoms of schizophrenia, or some of the symptoms of schizophrenia, like hallucinations or delusions, but you also have features of a mood disorder, such as depression or mania. Okay, and to the causes of psychotic disorders. First, biological. There could be prenatal viral infections, birth complications, maternal malnutrition, advanced paternal age that all may play a role in the onset of a psychotic disorder. Looking at genetics, people are beginning to recognize specific genes and the chromosomal locations of some of them. And what you'll want to notice, and I'll get to that with the twins as well, is that it's about 50-50 if you have a set of identical twins, even if they're reared apart. There's a 50-50 chance that if one twin has the signs of schizophrenia, the other one will develop them as well. With neurotransmitters, and I'm thinking you guys probably remember this from earlier in the year, that dopamine hypothesis is one of the neurotransmitters that may be involved. So this overactivity of certain types of dopamine neurons. Amphetamines in large doses bring on these positive symptoms, and low doses worsen the symptoms of those who already have the disorder. Things like Haldol and Thorazine would be drugs that treat schizophrenia by blocking or reducing dopamine activity in the brain, which will overall reduce the positive symptoms. Remember, positive symptoms being like hallucinations, delusions, that sort of thing. Looking at brain abnormalities here, larger cerebral ventricles. So you take somebody like John Hinckley Jr., who, I don't know if you recall this from your history classes, he had attempted to assassinate Reagan. He had enlarged ventricles. PET scans reveal lower activity in frontal and temporal lobes involved with language, attention, and memory. There's a loss of gray matter. Again, sort of a chicken and an egg problem with this as well. But they've noticed that when people are actively hallucinating, so say if you are experiencing auditory hallucinations, that your brain is responding as though you're hearing something, but it's not remember Wernicke's area, which is responsible for comprehending language. It's not Wernicke's area that's activated when somebody's having auditory hallucinations. It's actually Broca's area. So it's like they're hearing their own thoughts and they're not able to tell the difference between what's in their head and what's in their outside world. And I want you to note about that, that when somebody is hearing voices in their head, these voices tend to be really negative. They're not telling you, you're a strong, confident woman, you don't need cigarettes. They're telling you some horrible things. But with that, you'll also see in some people, depending on the types of delusions that they have, strengthening and overactivity in the amygdala, which would make sense, those fear circuits, and the thalamus, which also makes sense because it sorts out sensory information from your major sense organs with the exception of nose, right? So it doesn't process olfaction. And lastly, looking at the psychosocial theories, I mentioned the twin studies. So if you take something like schizophrenia, it's in about 1% of the population, right? To varying degrees of severity. So you have about a 1 in 100 chance. And the onset would be typically earliest you really usually see it is late teens. By about mid to late 20s, like someone who's going to have an onset would typically have already had one by then. That's the normal zone for that anyway. But if somebody in your family, like a parent or sibling, has schizophrenia, that puts your odds at 1 in 10. And if it's an identical twin that has an onset of schizophrenia, it puts the odds at about 1 to 2. Which is interesting because you take identical twins and you're like, okay, well, identical twins, if one is schizophrenic, then the other one should be. It shows you that there is this nature-nurture play There is an importance in terms of the environment, which is why you do see higher rates of schizophrenia in people who experience greater levels of stress, particularly socioeconomic stress. And then the family communication theory would suggest that the type of communication in the home could cause a child to withdraw and thereby set the stage for schizophrenia. The thing that I want to mention is that like you're not going to become schizophrenic. It's not like that. It's if you're genetically predisposed, you may or may not have schizophrenia. You may or may not have an onset. And there are certainly things in the environment that could cause an onset or help to ensure an onset. But you're not going to create schizophrenia if you weren't already genetically predisposed to being schizophrenic.